Bubblicious' comb pretty much looks the same all the time. It's kind of purple, kind of looks like a brain, but that is normal for him. Now I have some other chickens that get some variations in their combs. Sometimes their combs are kind of small and shriveled up, and sometimes they're bigger, and it can get concerning. And I know, especially for new chicken keepers, they're like, I don't know, this looks different. Should I be concerned? So we're going to talk about it. Hello friends, welcome to Chickenlandia. My name is Dahlia. I'm a backyard chicken educator, also known as the president of Chickenlandia. Backyard chickens has been the best way for me to find peace and joy in my life, and I want to help you find that too. Bubblicious, your hair is just getting more and more glorious by the day. I'm gonna put you down, okay? Yes. There are a few different ways that you can tell that a chicken is struggling, that a chicken is sick. It's really important to be able to recognize these signs because chickens are super good at hiding illness. The reason for that is because of flock dynamics. Chickens don't exist the way that humans do. You know, humans are very social animals, but we also have like an individualistic way that we exist. And chickens are more about the flock. They are flock animals. Their instincts when it comes to survival are really geared towards the flock, the survival of the flock. So if they see that a chicken is sick and possibly making the flock vulnerable, like if they were wild living in the jungles of Asia, that sick chicken would be making their flock vulnerable to predation and other things, they would want to eliminate that vulnerability in their flock. And so that's why it is very important to be able to recognize when a chicken is sick so you can remove them from the flock and handle it and not have, you know, a bad situation that nobody wants to deal with. One of the ways that you can tell if a chicken is healthy is by the condition of their comb. Sometimes there are signs in their comb that something is going wrong, even if they're acting normally, even if they're pecking and scratching, they're just not, you know, something's going on, but they're not letting the flock know that they are not feeling well. Now, that being said, a difference in the comb is not necessarily an indication that they are sick. Combs go through a lot of changes throughout the year because chickens go through lots of changes when the seasons happen. For instance, when a chicken is molting, and that would happen in the late summer or early fall, sometimes it happens into the winter, especially if it's a frizzle, okay? And they're just naked in the winter. During that time, their combs will not look like they did when they were like laying in all their glory in the springtime. They're going to be smaller, they're going to be a little shriveled looking, they're going to be a little more pale looking, but as long as they're nice and pink and healthy, it is not an indication that something is necessarily wrong with that chicken. The winter time is another time when you will see changes in your chicken's combs. They will likely be more pale, just like when they were molting, and sometimes they'll go from a molt right into the winter time. The days are shorter and they're not going to be laying. And so when they're not laying, their combs are not going to have that big, beautiful red color. And even, you know, even the rose combs one, you see a lot of redness in their combs. You're just not going to see that in the winter because the days are shorter, they're not laying. And so their combs are going to reflect that. As soon as the winter's over, the days are getting longer, you're getting into spring, and they're laying again, you're going to see that redness come back and that comb look nice and healthy. Now, even in the springtime, there can be some comb variation because a lot of chickens will go broody in the spring and in the summer. So when they're doing that, they're broody, they're sitting on eggs, they're sitting in the nest, maybe they're incubating eggs, maybe they just wish they were incubating eggs, and they're in that broody state. During that time, their combs are going to look a lot different because they're just not, first of all, they're not laying, they are not as active. Combs are going to shrink, going to look a little bit pale. Don't worry, once that broody phase is over with, they're going to get that big comb back. They're going to start laying again. They're going to look healthy again. But when they're broody, they're just not like doing all their activities. They're not active. They're just sitting in the nesting box. And so that affects the state of their comb. Sometimes people will send me photos of their rooster or their hen, and on the comb there's these little black dots. They're concerned. They're like, what does this mean? Is something going on? And usually what that means, if you look closer, you can see that those little black dots are actually scabs. Something that is very normal with chickens, whether it's a hen or a rooster, is that they can correct each other by pecking each other on their comb. A lot of times it happens on the roost when, at dusk when they're going to kind of find their position on the roost and they're figuring it out and they're correcting each other. They will peck at each other on the comb. Most of the time that is normal. If it's something that's chronic, if they're really drawing blood on each other, then that is more of a concern. But usually it's just part of being a chicken. Sometimes there's little squabbles that happen and that can be reflected in the comb. Sometimes when people see those scabs, they will worry that it is an illness called fowl pox. And fowl pox is basically like chicken pox for chickens. If you're concerned, if you think it might be fowl pox, I would Google it and look at some photos. Fowl pox is something that needs to run its course. Once you see it in your flock, it is going to run its course through the flock. It's like seeing chicken pox in a daycare, okay? It is gonna run its course, all right? Most of the time, it is not something to be concerned about. It's, you might have a chicken that's struggling here or there. If that happens, you follow the rest method. If you don't know what the rest method is, I will leave a link about that in the description. Fowl pox isn't dangerous unless it becomes something called wet pox. And that will indicate that there's more seriousness going on. There's more of an infection going on. They're probably having swelling. They're probably having some respiratory issues. And that will require more action on your part and possibly some veterinarian care in order to get through it. If you are seeing white spots or lesions, like white kind of crusty lesions on your chicken's comb, that can indicate ringworm or another type of fungal infection or disease that is going on with that chicken. And that's something that you will need to take action on quickly so that you can handle it. If you are seeing a very obvious darkening of your chicken's comb, especially, they got this nice red comb and it looks purple, and that is not, they're not a black-skinned chicken, so they don't have a purplish comb. It is very unusual to see that. That is a very serious indication of something going on. Sometimes it can just be that they were cold and they need to warm up, but usually it means that there's not enough oxygen getting to their comb. And that can indicate several different illnesses, and it could be not a great outcome for your chicken, and you need to handle it quickly. It is possible that you will need to consult a vet at that point. I hate saying that because a lot of people don't have access to a vet. There's just not poultry vets where they are, or they can't afford to be taking chickens to a vet. If that is the case for you, I don't want you to feel guilty about it for 1 second. Do not feel guilty about it. You're giving your chickens a really good life. If you can't afford to take them to the vet, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have them, okay? It just means that you're gonna have to do more research and do a lot of home care and understand that if you lose them, that they had a really good life and you did a really good thing and you're a good chicken keeper. Let's say you had a very cold night and the temperatures just dropped and you are noticing some discoloration in your chicken's comb. Maybe one chicken, maybe a couple chickens. You're seeing basically a line down their comb, and then above that line there's some gray area, or some white area, just a discoloration. That is very possibly an indication that your chicken got frostbite. If that happens, I don't want you to feel super duper bad, okay? It is very common. It happens to the best of us. Usually it happens to chickens that have the bigger combs, especially the ones that have the big floppy combs. I have a chicken, her name is Scully. She's a leghorn. And it didn't get that cold. I thought she was gonna be okay, but she did end up with frostbite one year, and I felt really bad. Now, the thing about frostbite is once they get it, you do not want them to get it again. You need to protect that tissue. It's basically like dying tissue. Sometimes it can heal. What I did with Scully is I took some A&D ointment and I put that on her comb. The weather was very mild after that initial drop in temperature, so she was able to stay in her coop and not get a recurring case of frostbite. And to my utter shock and surprise, her comb just completely healed. I did not expect that. A lot of times it will, that tissue will die and it will fall off, and hopefully your chicken will be fine after that. If you just initially want to protect your chicken's comb and take some preemptive action, then make sure you put some A&D ointment on it or some Vaseline on it when the temperatures are getting really low, if you don't have supplemental heat in your coop, okay? And when I say supplemental heat, so you don't make a comment, I don't recommend heat lamps. I know a lot of people use them. I don't. I use a sweeter heater in my coop. They're pretty expensive. So what I say to people is, if you're going to use a heat lamp, you just need to secure it like really well and keep it really clean so it doesn't fall and cause a fire in your coop. You might be wondering, like, well, how cold are we talking? How cold is too cold for chickens? Well, I do have a video about that. It's all about when, it gets so cold, could it be dangerous for your chickens? This is something that is really important for you to learn about. I get more messages about the cold temperatures than I do any other chicken thing, okay? So you can learn about it right now so you don't have to stress about it. It is on the screen. There is a video that you should watch. It is 100% friendly backyard chickens, education and entertainment, and I know you're gonna love it.